it felt like a prison. I felt like a prisoner in my own body, betrayed by my own body, grieving ease, grieving peace, grieving non-pain. When I would tell people, it was like, oh, but you look good bald. And I'm like, but I don't feel good in
Yeah.
my body. Yeah.
Hi there, grief growers, and welcome back to Grief Grower. I am so delighted to be sharing space with you again today. If you've been growing alongside me in my work for a while, welcome back. And if you are new to me and my work, hello. My name is Shelby Forsythia. I am a 3-time author, a grief coach, and the founder of Life After Loss Academy, which is an online course and community that has helped dozens of grieving people stop feeling lost, stuck, broken, and alone, and start building lives that they genuinely love from the lives that loss forced them to live. This includes, of course, not only death-related losses, but also losses like divorce and breakup, major diagnosis, and every single other loss that changes your life. Here on Grief Grower, we believe that grief is not something to get over. It is something that we grow with and alongside, and that when we stop treating grief like a problem to be solved and start treating it like an invitation to live more deeply, we can create meaningful lives rich with the memories that we carry, the struggles that we faced, and the preciousness of what it is to be here right now. Today on Grief Grower, I am so honored to be joined by grieving spouse and cancer survivor Lisa Keefauver to talk about grief and the body, not just how grief impacts our bodies, but what it's like to grieve changes in our bodies brought on by things like diagnosis, trauma, surgery, and age. We discuss what it's like to grieve a body while being simultaneously trapped inside of it. This is our only home on earth. It's the thing we are grieving, yet it is the only place we live. The pressure that society often lays upon us to just be grateful you're still alive, and how to feel centered and grounded in a body that has been racked by loss after loss. Before we get into this conversation with Lisa, just a quick reminder that release day for my third book, Of Course I'm Here Right Now, 3 actually helpful things to say to someone grieving, is less than 50 days away, and it's coming up on March 31st. This little guidebook teaches you how to support a grieving person in your life with the best free tool that any of us has, and that is our words, so that you will never enter another conversation with someone who's grieving wondering, what on earth do I say to comfort them? Pre-orders are super helpful when it comes to getting the book seen by bookstores and the marketing powers that be, so please find a link to pre-order your copy of Course I'm Here Right Now in the show notes. If you have already pre-ordered the book, thank you so very much. You can submit your receipt number from Bookshop, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or your local indie bookstore on my website. It takes less than a minute, and get access to my free 6-week book club where we read Of Course I'm Here Right Now in its entirety and discuss it together as a group. This book club will kick off in early April, so do submit your receipt. Again, it takes less than a minute to do so, and make sure you have the book in your hands by then. And if you would like to celebrate the launch of this book with me, I am hosting 2 launch parties that I would love for you to attend. The first one is taking place the eve before the book comes out on March 30th in Chicago. So if you want this book in your hands the night before the rest of the world gets it, please come to this party. The second launch party happens on the day the book comes out, which is March 31st on YouTube. So no matter where in the world you live, you can tune in to hear more about the clients and interactions that inspired this book, and I'll give you tips and scripts for what to say to someone grieving, and you will hear me read some excerpts from the book as well. And of course, the replay of that virtual event will be available if you can't attend live. I know so many of you are listening in other countries, Europe, Australia, the Czech Republic, Japan. We have listeners from all over the world, so please do RSVP for the virtual event, and you will receive the replay even if you can't make it live. Now let's get to my conversation with Lisa about body grief. Here's a little bit about Lisa Keefauver. Lisa Keefauver is a narrative therapy-trained social worker and widow turned grief activist. She has transformed her personal and professional experiences with loss into a mission to reimagine grief. For more than 20 years, she has dedicated herself to the healing power of holding space and bearing witness, helping people transform their relationship with grief. As the host of a top-rated grief podcast, TEDx and keynote speaker, professor, grief guide, grief smart workplace consultant, and author of the acclaimed book Grief is a Sneaky Bitch, an uncensored guide to navigating loss, Lisa is expanding our collective understanding of and experience with grief. Let's get to it. Lisa, I am so honored to have you here on Grief Grower because you recently wrote about something I think that a lot of grieving people experience, but nobody really wants to talk about, which is grieving the body. And
Yeah.
so, as we get into it, I would love for you to talk about what is it like to grieve a body while also being forced to live in a body, because we have no other homes on earth. Your personal experience, but maybe also experiences you've seen or observed in other people who are grieving bodies that have changed or are changing or unpredictable as a result of loss.
Yeah. Well, friend, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's so lovely to be with you online. Sometimes we get to do it in person. Yeah, this is certainly an area that I've reflected on, thought about, and worked with people about, because certainly, as you mentioned, I've worked with clients over the years who've experienced, catastrophic injuries and chronic illnesses, and so really working with it. And like for many of us, just like when I had to learn about grief all over again, even when I was a clinical director, when my husband died in 2023, when I got cancer and started
Mm-hmm.
to go through the impact of all of the physiological losses, I was like, oh, now I know something in a different way, when it's in your lived body. Um, and the losses cascade, we'll probably talk about it in our time together today. But not surprisingly, the first loss was really when I lost all my hair in preparation for chemotherapy. And hair, you think, oh, hair, whatever, it grows back. And it did. And I'm grateful for it. But it makes you begin to realize the connection we have to identity and the body and the way that we are showing up in the world. And the hair that I had before, if you're watching me, used to be long blonde hair, which was its own shift in representation from a version of me that I was before I became a widow. So that
Yes.
blonde hair represented a version of me that survived something. And then when it all came off, it was um, shocking. Yeah.
Yes. I remember. So, for people who are listening to this podcast, I'll link it in the show notes. But Lisa wrote a Substack article called "Who the Fuck Is That in the Mirror?" And it's an article about body grief. And I read this, and it brought up for me so much of not necessarily what I didn't remember, but what I don't usually remember about my mom's
Yeah.
cancer experience and then gradually dying experience. But it's something that I think as people adjacent to grievers, we don't know how to be there for.
Yeah.
Because I remember my mom getting her breast cancer diagnosis also. And one of the things that she grieved most was her hair, her nails, which she did or polished on a
Yes.
regular
Yeah.
basis. The fact that her body was now the site of a medical event that she could not escape. She couldn't outsource it to anybody else or say, will you take this for me or I'll pay somebody else to go through this procedure so I don't have to. Losing parts of her body, losing nerve sensation. And I remember her relaying these things to me as a daughter. And I was not a grief professional at the time. Absolutely. My mom's death I refer to as the first and the worst for me, because that's the intensity that I felt it at. But I have so many memories of not knowing what to say to her as she grieved her body to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we don't recognize just enough in our society how significant our bodies are for moving around in the world. And when they change, that really fucks with our heads.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I live here and I'm not in control of the excavations, the renovations, the demolitions. I'm not in control of what's happening here.
And I can't even escape it when the home that my body is also the torturer of my, existence. Yeah.
Yes, I have
Yeah.
no choice but to be here. So I wonder, this is not really a question, but I wonder if you can speak more on that idea of
Yeah.
I can't escape this grief, just
it.
like we can't escape other forms of grief, but it's literally you live in the place that is
Yeah.
changing and
Yeah.
have no choice but to stay there.
I do want to explore that. Something came up as you were talking that I want to name for my experience of grief and the body that I can imagine are for a lot of people, which was the betrayal that I felt because I actually knew something was wrong for an entire year. I had a lump and I went to 6 different doctors. I had mammograms that told me we were fine. I had ultrasounds that told me we were fine, but I knew there was a pain and a lump in my breast and that something wasn't right. And so part of what the grief has been is this, can I even trust my body? Can I trust what I know about my body? Can I trust the people whose job it is to know something about my body? And then when they finally did do a biopsy after a year and so many, as I said, more than 6 doctors who dismissed me, and they called me to tell me, ooh, in fact, it is triple positive breast cancer. I now had to entrust this body to a system that had so consistently betrayed me and let me down. And just as a note for those who don't know me, my husband went through an entire year full of doctors who were just telling him all of his symptoms and issues were mental health, only to find out he had a grapefruit-sized brain tumor and he died in my arms 2.5 weeks later.
Right.
So I just name all that to say there's this relationship you have with your body. Can I trust what I know? Can I advocate for myself? Can I trust the people to take care of me? And that connection and betrayal by other people, and even my own dismissal, like I looked back and thought, like, why didn't you fight harder? Why didn't you yell more? Although I did, I kept going to doctors. But anyway, so the betrayal, the connection to my body, the trauma that happens in a medical system that has betrayed you lives in my body. But then I have to serve up my body
Yes.
to
Be treated, to be seen, to be examined, to be cut open.
And so I think I just named that. That was the baseline for which I had to come to this reckoning of being in my body. As I went through treatment. And then there was the physiological cascade. I underwent surgery, a lumpectomy. So they removed the whole front part of my left breast, areola, nipple, the whole thing, just chopped it right off in the front. And then they removed the sentinel lymph node under my left arm. That was followed by 12 straight weeks of chemotherapy, 30 days of radiation, and a year of immunotherapy infusion. And now followed by hormone blocking medication that I take daily and have for 2 years, will for 3 more years. And along that way, the pain of my body and being a prisoner in my body is something that I've never experienced. There's 2 things. There's the being a prisoner in your body when you're in pain. And then there's the identity part of your body that you live with forever. Like when I look in the mirror still to this day, I don't quite recognize. That head shaving thing I mentioned at the beginning, it wasn't just, oh my gosh, now I'm a bald person, which thankfully for a minute there, I felt like I rocked the bald look. I was okay with that, right? But then came the head sores that happened as a result of treatment and being shaved and my body falling apart. And it led me to not sleep. At one time along the way, I didn't sleep for more than 3 days because there was literally no position in which I could lay my head. And it felt like a prison. I felt like a prisoner in my own body, betrayed by my own body, grieving ease, grieving peace, grieving non-pain, frustrated by the world, just like for other kinds of losses too, that they were going on as if, when I would tell people, it was like, oh, but you look good bald. And I'm like, but I don't feel good in my body. Yeah.
Yeah. And you are talking to someone, you are talking to me when I do not feel like myself. I'm not like, I don't know if this is true for you, but I know for me, after my mom died, there were parts of myself that I didn't recognize. And I was like, I'm not all here.
Yes.
Like I'm not fully inhabiting myself in the way that I used to before my mom died. There's a sense of being trapped and not being able to escape, but then there's a sense of almost dissociation or removal from oneself. Also, I tried to name it my first book. I called it self-abandonment, or self-distancing. But there's this sense too of like, you are talking to me, you are speaking to me. I am upright. I am saying words, but I'm not all the way here.
Yeah. I don't think you can see me because I don't know who I am anymore right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that was profoundly confusing. And I think, for me, this wasn't, of course, the first loss that I went through in my life. And I've experienced a physical trauma loss in my teens. I was raped when I was 15. So I know what it's like to be a prisoner of your own body, to be trapped in your body, to feel betrayed by the world, and not feel safe in the home that is your body. This
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a new experience. And yet, it was deeply transformational, again, because this was something I'm going to use this word in air quotes, choosing to go through, meaning I didn't choose cancer, but I was choosing the treatment. So all of the
Sure.
side effects of what was happening was tearing my body down. And it was just deeply, deeply out of body. I mean, it's like I tried to be in my body. It was out of body. There was not a lot of agency. I do
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about I think the positive attributes that I brought to trying to live into and make peace with the body that was, even though that it wasn't the body that I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. And there was a lot of practices that other grief experiences had taught me that helped me navigate it.
I'm like, we'll get there. I got to sit
Yeah,
here
no, we'll
for
get
another
there. But
minute or two.
I just want to, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was, I'm not sure if I'm tying together if that is making sense to you, but it wasn't the first time, but there was something, I guess what I'm trying to get at around, where do I have agency in this? In terms of how I'm navigating treatment, what are the supports I'm putting in place? How am I asking for and demanding, palliative kinds of supports, though I was not offered any palliative care formally throughout this entire treatment. And that felt important to me. It didn't keep me from dissociating from my body. It didn't keep me from wanting to crawl out of my skin and escape. But when I felt the most either a hostage in my own body or disassociating from my own body, I definitely turned towards, what do I have agency over, even if the agency was, a loving kindness meditation or a, surrender acceptance kind of mindfulness practice, even if it wasn't about doing something in the conventional way.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to put a pin in that because I want to get there, but I think I want to pick up on one more thing you said. And you talked about this a little bit in your article, but what would you say to people who suggest, or in a society that suggests, you are not allowed to grieve your body because either you chose this path for it or you survived. You didn't die.
Ooh, that's where all the expletives come in. That's where all the expletives come in, Yeah, exactly. That's where I want to use every iteration of the word fuck because it has so many beautiful uses. I think there's what I would say to either the person going through an embodied grief experience or to the people who love that person, stop mistaking that it is either or. It is both and. I was deeply grateful that there was something that they could do to try to treat my cancer. I was deeply grateful and present and aware as I was navigating it that the predicted survival rate for me based on this whole conglomeration of treatment would be in the 90th percentile. Like my predicted survival rate from this cancer was good. I was very present to that. I was very aware of that. I was grateful that I had health insurance, even though it cost me an arm and leg to be able to do this with the out-of-pocket costs.
It cost you a boob and some hair.
I've got my boob, my hair. I'm missing this. I still have a scar here of the port catheter. And it cost me a lot of money for sure, even with health insurance. And so grateful for all of those things, honoring of all of those things, walking alongside two other women in my life who had different forms of breast cancer at the same time, some of which were not as treatable.
Mm-hmm.
in the way that mine was. They had a different, path, triple negative, not triple positive. And yet, if I don't honor the truth of the grief of my hair, of my breast, of my womanhood, that's how I thought about it at the time, of the pain levels in my body, then I'm not me either. Like, I'm not
Ah.
don't ask me to dance monkey dance, And so I would say it's not up to you, the person showing up. And I know you can appreciate this so much with the work that you do in your upcoming book. It's not for us to tell you, to lead you where you need to be in that place with the both and of being grateful for what you have and grieving what you've lost. It's for you to show up and listen and
Mm-hmm.
follow the lead. Thankfully I know a lot of amazing people who get grief pretty well since I do this work.
Yeah.
So I was lucky for some people in my life to really get showing up and saying, maybe not in this phrase, though I would love it if they would, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is your grief over your cancer today? Or could say, like, would show up swearing at cancer and then say, like, what's your relationship with cancer today, or your body today, or your treatment today? But there was so many people, as I wrote about in that essay on my Substack, is that, yeah, did the at least
Mm-hmm.
fill in the blank. You're so lucky that fill in the blank. And all the platitudes that allowed them to distance themselves from the fear and the pain that they were seeing on my face and hearing in my voice. And I would say to those who do that, again, maybe from a good place, good intentions, you and I have talked about that before, all I felt was distanced. All I felt was dismissed. All I felt was
Mm-hmm.
othered. And all I felt was, you are not a safe person for me to talk to my grieving body about.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. What you have just indicated is that you are not a good home for the home that
Yeah.
I'm grieving and grieve.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that happens. That happens especially, I think, for folks who haven't done their own work. I'm using that in air quotes too, sort of, who haven't been in their pain of themselves in an embodied loss, who haven't walked alongside somebody they love in an embodied loss, somebody who often the people in the medical field that I was coming into contact with was, not all of them, but many of them. And it kept me from feeling full permission to be devastated by what I saw and felt in the mirror. I had all kinds of complications. I had a seroma that developed in my breast after the surgery. I had 2 basically anaphylactic stop breathing reactions in 2 of my 12 chemotherapy infusions, where they had to put oxygen tube and slow things down. Infection, you name it. As I said, I had a lot of side effects on top of the pain of the treatment. And if for anybody listening who's gone through chemotherapy, I see you, I know. And I desperately just wanted to rail and rage
Mm-hmm.
about it and feel not hemmed in. I already do that to myself. I'm already a kind of, I was asking myself early on, my sort of principled idea around, is this another fucking growth opportunity? Like, that's
Yeah.
what my Substack is called. Like, what am I here to learn? And yet I realized at the 6-week mark in my chemotherapy, when everybody was saying, you're halfway there, congratulations, you're halfway there. I remember feeling flooded. I think I even got my camera out because I knew something was coming. And I thought, I'm only halfway there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only halfway there. It's not, I'm halfway there. how can I survive? How can I do this on my own? And I will say that the embodied grief of this experience brought back, as does often new grief, so much old grief.
Yes.
So I was here in the middle of the night, not sure if I was going to make it. And there's no husband in the room because he's dead. You know, there was nobody to, well, my dog, not nobody, sorry, Miss Frankie, but there was no human to hear my cries and my fear and to help soothe my body when it needed it. And that bringing up of old grief was also directly tied to the sort of intense physical losses that cancer was bringing me.
Yes, it may be for grievers who are having this experience of I'm having some kind of embodied grief, and the person I would normally go home to or could see my body as a home, or I could find home in their body, is now no longer here. I 1,000,000% resonate with that, and it can give you another reason to be mad at them, or to re-grieve them, or to say, I have another reason I'm mad. Another thing that I'm mad at you about. How dare you leave me here by myself to deal with cancer, or deal with a chronic illness, or deal with, this diagnosis for the rest of my life, and not have you to hold me, or to carry me to the bathtub, or to make soup, or whatever the case may be. I never missed my mom more than the first time I think I got like an eye infection, or I got a really gnarly case of strep throat. And I was like bedridden. It was so bad. And I remember I was away from home. I was doing an internship in college, and it was a sales internship and all the toxicity that comes with that industry. And they were basically like, power through it. You need to attend this lecture, or else you're not going to be able to go out into the sales force, or be whatever boots on the ground you need to be. And I was like, I literally cannot move. And the only thing I wanted was to be taken care of by my mother, who was dead. And that's a very small experience of an acute illness that I can imagine and extrapolate out over months and years of something like cancer or another chronic illness that has tons and tons of ramifications. So yes, I didn't even think of that when reading your article, but yes, I can see that as another reason to grieve old losses of like, how dare you not be here for this? Like, what the hell? What the hell?
Absolutely.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. I wrote down, I want to get into now, like, what did you do to cope with the fact that and I've never heard the term embodied grief before, so thank you for teaching me that. I'll be writing about that later. What did you do to cope with grieving in your body, or embodied grief? And if we can hold two thoughts in our mind simultaneously, if people are not able to access their bodies as sources of grounding, I'm thinking people who do not do breathing exercises anymore in the aftermath of COVID. Like, I do not want to ground through my body or my toes because I do not want to feel that. What are some tools or exercises for people who are like, I don't want my body to be the doorway through which I try to find peace, because that is the source of my suffering. So like, what did you do individually? And then what can we offer people that are like, I can't use my body as the doorway because that is the unsafe place?
No, I so appreciate you naming that so much. And by the way, I mean, I named it embodied grief. I don't know if this is really a term, and somebody else might have named it. There's, of course, the grieving body that we know from our friend, Mary Frances O'Connor.
Yes.
But that's just how I described what all of the cascading losses that I was experiencing as I went through cancer. So that's the term that I named. And what I wanted to say to you, Shelby, too, I appreciate so much, is I think this is the tricky dynamic of any kind of trauma or traumatic loss, or sort of embodied grief, is that often the practices or the places that we might lean on to sort of soothe our nervous system and to find some relief are the exact places where we don't want to go, or we're not ready to go yet. I would use yet, or now, or for now. I don't really like the sort of totality. Yes, exactly. The sort of totality of it. And so that was hard. And I've been a long time meditator for, I don't know, a decade or so, more than a decade, maybe two now. And there were certainly kinds of practices that I couldn't do, especially like those days when I wasn't sleeping because of the head sores, or in the 12 weeks when the chemo literally made my body feel, I don't even want to describe the details of what that felt like. So for me, what it was about connecting my body with the bigger home. So a practice that I used, that I had developed after the death of my husband, and then really amplified after the death of my friend Joe, were beauty walks. So how can I recognize that no matter the fact that I don't recognize my own body, that I don't feel at home in my own body, that on some days my body feels like a very dangerous place to be, I'm still a part of a home that is so much more dynamic and beautiful. And so beauty walks are a thing that I took on. As I said, Eric's been gone 14 years. So it's been more than a decade that I've been doing this. And it can look like of a lot of things, but for me, it's usually no music, no podcast, which is hard for lots of us. If you can, but also don't do that if you can't. Maybe something, and take off on a walk. And by the way, there were times where my beauty walks were driving myself to the park bench that overlooked the ocean and sitting on the bench and doing this. Because for many of us, if you're listening, walking is not, I don't want to be ableist.
Accessible.
Like walking is not accessible. It's less of, movement, certainly we know if you have the capacity to move physiologically helps soothe things, but it's really less about the walk and more about the putting the home of your body in the home of nature. I know we've shared this phrase before that we love so much by Cheryl Strayed, sort of putting yourself in the way of beauty. Right. Or I think about Dacher Keltner's work and the work of awe. I was just doing all this before I knew there was like science and data around the impact of awe and wonder and delight. So that was a practice that I did. It was less about turning inward. I hear you saying like nobody wants to ground their feet or turn inward to their breath when this home feels so difficult. My best friend has been living with advanced Lyme disease for a long time, and our home is a battlefield. So we talk about this often. Nature, beauty in whatever form it is. Noticing if a butterfly is flying. I happen to live somewhere where there are butterflies and hummingbirds kind of 365, or the way the birds kind of soar and dip into the water over the ocean. But doesn't matter. I did this when I lived in Austin in the dead of summer when everything felt like it was on fire. It's about bringing some intention outside of your body. So can you notice the way the breeze moves that tree? Can you notice the way that kind person picked up that kid's toy and handed it back to them? Is it the flower that's growing through the cracks in the sidewalk? That was one that helped me. I gave a talk last year, I guess, at Endwell, called Centering Aliveness in a World Full of Loss. And I talked about some of the practices, so sort of 7 practices. That was one of them, sort of beauty walks. Random acts of kindness. So I gave away flowers. This started before my cancer treatment, but I doubled down on it during my cancer treatment. I would buy and give away a bouquet of flowers at my local farmer's market every week. I've been doing it for a couple of years now. That outside of yourself thing, the capturing beauty with a camera. Like I would just decide I'm going to go out and look for the color orange and try to capture as many orange things as I could. So I was my body was still a vehicle, but I was getting outside of myself, placing my home that is a body in the home of all things. And for me, it was important to be on the lookout for put myself in the place of wonder or awe. To just be in that place. Yeah.
I'll say for myself, as somebody who was raised by a performing arts mother and loved performing arts, I'm like, go see some art, or go see a show, or go see a concert, or go to a museum. If you can, put yourself in those places. I remember as my mom was dying, my girlfriend and I at the time had no idea what else to do after her memorial, so we went and saw a movie. And it ended up being like a storyline of a wounded child making art from her pain, and I didn't know it was going to be this. We just picked a random movie, and then it turned into, there were like some musical components, and I love music, and it ended in this place that was like painful but nostalgic, but ultimately good. And in the midst of my grief, I was like, oh, I'm a part of a larger world that makes art from pain. And even if I don't know how I'm going to make art from this pain, because my mom literally died 5 days ago.
Yes.
I remembered that I live in a world where that happens for other people. And it just opened a door of possibility where I thought that maybe there was none that early in my grief experience. And so even for grieving people, a lot of times I think grieving people shame themselves for sinking into sitcoms or movies or, scrolling through Outer in their phones or making dumb clay things with their hands or whatever they're able to do. And I'm like, with the right mindset, it is literally you not escaping from the world, but immersing yourself that much more deeply inside of it and not through the vehicle of your body. Yeah. And that's a pretty incredible thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think of Suleika, who's written, of course, about this a lot. I mean, creativity as a resource, especially when the location of your grief is in your body, is remarkably really powerful. And the cool thing is can be just as powerful consuming it as making it. So it doesn't require you to get out, your watercolor set or, to do, compose some music. You can be a consumer of it. But I think that to me, the key was kind of connecting me to a bigger something outside of myself, that I was a part of something, even when I didn't recognize my home. I also I tried, I think it was useful. It was challenging. Later on through my treatment experience, and even still to this day, I try to do periodic standing in front of the mirror and acknowledging the way that my body, even through its pain, even through its disformity, the way that it served me. So I'll stand in front of the mirror and place a hand over my heart and say, "Thank you, body. Thank you, body." Even as I'm sometimes tearing, and even as there's a part of me that's looking in the mirror repulsed by what I see. But there was something really important to me to both and my body as not a home, and also thank you, body, for I'm here today.
Yeah.
I'm breathing. So I tried to, and still do to this day, really try to tend to the both and of my body as a place of betrayal, but also my body as a place, as a resource or a source of my aliveness. And that is meaningful. And to those listening who are in the depths of their chronic illness or their pain or somebody they love or wherever their grief is, it's all around being curious and the invitation to try. It's not about accomplishing or looking in some way that you are doing or achieving these things. And I binge watched so many TV series and dissociated and also checked out, because it's about the kind of titration and pendulation. It was really clear to me that I had to just allow myself. I mean, there were days where all I could do was stare at the wall for hours, and I let myself stare at the wall for hours. I think one of the things having an embodied grief or going through this cancer journey taught me, or reminded me, I don't think it's taught me, but I think we all need this reminder in the culture that we have, is that we're human beings, not human doings. And when you have limitations from whatever it is you're going through, you're just acutely aware. And I think so much of the identity crisis or the pain and the suffering that, I'll just speak for myself, that I experienced as somebody who's a very productive doer, creator, podcaster, writer, whatever, speaker, was finding value in my identity as a human that was just being. And
shifting where value comes from.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I wonder, as we're wrapping up, I didn't know if I was going to mention your book today, but I am. Lisa's book, also the name of her podcast, Grief is a Sneaky Bitch. We did an event together in Chicago, I think about 1.5 years ago now, to promote her book. But one of my favorite sections is on page 185, and it talks about the grief of feeling lost and homesick, and feeling homesickness as a symptom of grief. And you talk about it more in the lens of like the death of a loved one. You have lost your home on earth in another person, which I kind of talked about with my mom. But I wonder too, if you could speak on feeling homesickness over your body, and then maybe for folks who are listening, like what are a few ways that you have found or discovered or learned to gradually be able to come home to
Yeah.
the being of your body, even in the midst of great loss and grief?
Yeah. Um, the homesickness really is a quality of grief that's too often ignored. I was just flipping to that page for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember discovering that as I was writing this book, and it just felt like the truest thing I have ever known in that moment. Um, and I think it absolutely applies both when someone is physically present but psychologically distant, as in when you're looking into the eyes of a loved one who doesn't recognize you because of dementia or Alzheimer's or is different. But I think there is a kind of a homesickness to um, the sense of identity for myself. Like, who am I? Is this a body that feels safe? Will I ever feel safe again? Will I ever
Right.
feel comfort again? So also there's sort of the ambiguity that happens when you're navigating something like cancer or a chronic illness or something like that. Like, and what will a new state of home be? To me, my first place answer to people always is start with naming it. I think, I mean, I can offer some practices that I did, but I think we all want, like, how do I get to the top 5, top 10 list of ways to like hurry up and stop feeling homesick? But I think for me, one of the most important transformations in all the various losses, including this latest one, has been the time where I really named it and allowed that naming to sink into my bones.
Mm-hmm.
So not just at the intellectual, like this sucks, but like
Mm-hmm.
at the embodied um, place, and to weep and mourn for that I'm never going to know a world where I'm not someone who has experienced cancer and are always going to be on the lookout now for,
Mm-hmm.
living
Mm-hmm.
between scans and the whole scanxiety and all that happens. So I think naming it has been, and I do this with the work that I do with clients too, naming it, which isn't just a one-time thing, but coming back over and over to the homesickness that we feel, because I think that's the first place that you can, that is the first step, the start close in, as I refer to, that great line from David White's poem, Start Close In, is a place that then when you can acknowledge that, then you have maybe some distance to be able to say, so now what? So
Mm-hmm.
what might it feel like to nest in this home? What might this home look like? What might it take? What perspectives do I need to take on, or what activities or ways of being or practices that allow me to find a sense of home, not returning to the home that it was because it won't ever be that home, but
Yeah.
what can I know about the fact that this is now a home that needs rebuilding? I'm not getting rid of everything, but it's not going to look the same. And so that's a place where I could then drop into, I mean, it came back a lot to values over and over again. What do I value most? How do I want to live
Mm.
this life? What matters to me? And which I think in our ordinary lives, we move along without ever thinking about those questions at all. And that's not to diss us, of course. Like, how could you function? You can't sit and, be in your reflective space 24/7. You do have to like grocery shop and pay the bills and do your job. But I think that's what it has really allowed me to do. So, feeling strong, I got really clear that although I wasn't able to control the weight gain and some of the side effects and the fact that I'm, you know, um, I joked that I need to make a t-shirt that's called "Just One Nip." Um, that I'm walking around in the world with just one nip. I can't control that. So what does matter to me about my body? For me, it's been, I want my body to feel strong. I want my body to be able to um, carry me to the places that I want to go, especially nature and being in beauty. So I want to figure out how I can make my body that way. And I recognize that I have some um, access that some people may not, depending on their. So it's, what are the things that matter to you? What are the values? And then that is the gaze at which I am now looking towards. How am I spending the energy of my body so that it can feel like a home that feels, more often than not, look, I'm not out here being, like, I got my days, y'all. I got my days where I struggle, but I feel more and more at home with my body because I'm reclaiming what it means to be in my body by centering what matters to me, by centering the values that are important to me at this point in my life, which were not the values that I had at 20 or 30, or even the value that I had, after surviving that horrific assault when I was a teen. Right. So starting here now, what does this body need of me? And how can I be of service to it? Even accepting it is worthy of being a home to me exactly as it is, even if I don't change anything.
Yeah. And a lot of that, naming it, is also, without saying these specific words, is allowing it to have changed and to almost drop the grudge against your body of it having changed. I don't know exactly how to put words to this, but if we were to have bodies that would never change, we would not be people. Like, we would be robots. We would be
this is the human experience.
Inhuman.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. So you're following me there. And so thinking, I am homesick for my body, and then feeling I am homesick for my body, translated like another way is like, my body has changed with and without my input, consent, participation. That is a human thing. And to grieve the reality of that, and to name it and feel that through first, and then do the values, and then do the how do I shift it, and then what do I have control or autonomy or agency over, which you speak of so beautifully. And then so what? Where do we go from here?
But I wanted to circle around to why I think nature has been so fundamentally important to me, and putting myself in the way of beauty in the form of nature, although all beauty is beauty. Is nature reminds you of all of that. We watch the fields lay fallow, right? We watch the leaves fall. We watch the crocuses come out, even though it knows the snow is going to come bury it again in the spring in the Midwest or in the Northeast. And so I think it's such a powerful reminder. We live in a culture in which we think there's a never ending upward trajectory into healing, improvement, and health. And so then when our bodies vacillate and change and morph, and we think we can arrive somewhere and stay there, like happiness is a state that you can hold on to, as an example of a myth that we all hold. And so I think that naming thing, coming back around to you, seeing nature change, evolve, grow, and yet still be beautiful, yet still be strong, still come back in the spring, those kinds of things was such a relief in a way. Because when I was stuck with the story that I have to grip tightly, hold fast until I can get that old body back or that old life back, I was resisting the truth that I don't have control over that, and yet things can be beautiful again, and that I can find ease and peace in a home again. So nature is such a powerful, powerful teacher if we let it be. And that's, I would say, nature and poets are kind of the teachers that have helped me find home again in this body.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful. We're recording this in like the almost solstice time in Chicago. It is 10 degrees, feels like -4. I'm in like my puffer and my little hat, and I moved here from North Carolina more than 10 years ago now because winter is one of my favorite seasons. Like, I love winter in a way that not a lot of people do. And even people who are lifelong Chicagoans are like, fuck the winter. And sometimes what I think of, especially in seasons where I have been grappling with my body or some form of my identity as it relates to grief, is, it's easy for everyone to love me, or to appreciate me, or to shower praise upon me, or to be there for me when I am blooming, when I am a beautiful spring tree with all my blooms on, blah, blah, blah. I am less, I hesitate to use the word appealing, but I am less appealing to society or culture when I'm in my
Acceptable.
hashtag stick season, when I am a stick with no leaves and not anything.
Yes.
And sometimes that applies to our identity, sometimes that applies to our body, sometimes that applies to our emotional state, sometimes that applies to just like where we are in grief or professional.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes we're in full bloom and sometimes we are sticks with snow on them, and not everybody is excited about that. And it sort of reminds me of like, if we can approach ourselves from a lens of, can I find beauty in even that? Or where is there already beauty here, even if I can't see it yet, is a really worthwhile place to start. And I love going back to nature as an allegory for that, because to some people, I will be a reminder that winter comes and sometimes you're ugly. So, hello, sorry. I'm a reminder of that. I can't help it. And other times I won't be, but it is a beautiful and a brave thing to look at that and to say, I am finding ways to be next to that, and eventually to accept that and to live with that, and to continue to be a human being alongside that.
Yeah. I want to name, just as we wrap for listeners, that this is what you're talking about. For me anyways, this is a practice. This is not I heard it on a podcast or read it in a book and now I live into that all the time. This is a practice. This is a sustained meditation that we must take to be present to, I mean, it's a phrase like the messy middle. That was a chapter in my book that I talked about. That's that place in the middle where you're not where you were, but you're not where you're going. And there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And so I think nature is such a good reminder of that. And don't be fooled that you can come to a conclusion of that and then really know it in your bones, because for lots of reasons, including which our culture is so saturated in the messaging of you just need to hurry up and get to this place of perfection or success. And not recognizing that even the people who have gotten there, who are on your screens as you scroll, went through a messy middle. They just didn't show it to you. But I think the messy middle, I'm in a creative blossom right now. It's just emerged. But 2025 was a big, messy swamp middle, let me tell you, the whole year. And I really worked hard to just, I would say practically on a daily basis, like, well, this is the messy middle I'm in, when I would hit a wall or get knocked down, and I would just be like, I'm getting really tired of the messy middle, but here I am. What can I learn?
Yeah.
So just to name to all of us to have so much grace with yourself, and even naming it that, like when you're feeling in that in between, or you feel like you're vacillating, or you're quote unquote taking 2 steps back. What if you just called it the messy middle? And that's something that we all spend time in. And actually the messy middle is where creativity and beauty is born. So if you can try to be, try to be present to it.
Yeah. Don't know. I know how I got here. I don't know what's next. 1,000,000% is a place where a lot of creativity is, but also where, and I mean, I know I'll put your resources in the show notes. It's also where a lot of community can be found too.
Yes.
It's can be a place that's extraordinarily lonely, but especially when we are having, facing any sort of embodied grief or identity grief of who the fuck is that in the mirror, it is a place where a lot of other people are also asking that same question. And so I invite you, as we, go forth from the show, to connect with Lisa's work, especially body grief is something that you're facing, to connect with mine, but to also seek out other people who are in their own winter tree stick season.
I love that. I love
and
that
not
visual.
knowing if or when spring will arrive. Yes, no idea when that will come. Lisa, I am so glad to have had you on Grief Grower today and just talk about grief in the body, because I know it's a thing that so many grievers face but don't have words for yet. And I think there's such power in being able to put language to what we're feeling, and then eventually when we're ready to wrap values around it, or ask what matters, or even just name the thing that's happening. And you've just given us a plethora of so many tools today. So thank you for being on, and thank you, Lisa's body, for carrying her to this interview today.
Thank you, Lisa's body. Thank you, Lisa's body. I so appreciate it, and I so appreciate you, Shelby. Thank you so much for being in conversation and for your beautiful questions today.
That's all for this episode of Grief Grower. Thank you so very much for joining me and Lisa today to unpack the concept of embodied grief. You can find a link to connect with Lisa in the show notes. If you're looking for grief support beyond this show, you can find free workshops, blog articles, and my new What is Your Grief Supporter Strength quiz at shelbyforsythia.com/links. And if you would like to get support from me for your unique loss experience, join us in Life After Loss Academy, my online course and community. As a student, I will walk you through my 5-step grief framework, GRIEF, for rebuilding after loss, and you can get live coaching with me every single week to answer your questions. Replays are always available if you can't attend live. It's just $33 a month to join, or $22 a month if you are a marginalized or financially stressed griever, and you can cancel at any time. If this podcast felt validating, educational, or otherwise helpful to you, please subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And be sure to share this show with a friend, because you never know what someone you love is going through. Grief Grower is hosted by me, Shelby Forsythia, with theme music by Addie Goldstein. Until next time, Grief Growers, I see you. I am so proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world. And I love you, because even through grief, we are growing.